welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. The evening started off like any other. I had just finished a long day at work and was looking forward to a quiet dinner with Laura. She had called earlier, telling me she'd be home late. I figured she was caught up with one of her projects, but that was nothing new. She was always dedicated to her work at the marketing firm where she was an up-and-coming star. When I arrived home, the house was unusually quiet. The lights were dimmed, and a single lamp cast a soft glow in the living room. Laura was already there, seated on the edge of the sofa, her posture stiff and her eyes fixed on the floor. "Hey, Laura," I said, trying to sound cheerful as I took off my coat. "Long day, huh?" She looked up, and the sadness in her eyes immediately made me uneasy. "Jess, we need to talk." I set my briefcase down and walked over, sitting beside her on the sofa. "Sure, what's going on?" Laura took a deep breath, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I don't even know where to begin," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I reached out, gently placing my hand over hers. "Whatever it is, we can handle it together." She pulled her hand away, and that small gesture felt like a cold slap. "Jess, I've been seeing someone else," she said, her voice trembling. "His name is David. He's the CEO at my company." The shock hit me like a tidal wave. "David? The CEO?" I repeated, feeling my voice crack. "How long has this been going on?" Laura's eyes filled with tears as she struggled to find the right words. "For a few months now. I never meant for it to go this far, but it just happened." I could hardly breathe. "So, what does this mean? You're leaving me?" "Yes," she said, nodding. "I'm moving out and filing for divorce. David and I are starting a new life together." "I'm so sorry, Jess." I tried to process the betrayal, but my mind was racing. "I thought we were happy, Laura. We talked about our future. How could you do this?" Her voice cracked as she tried to explain. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was going to tell you sooner, but every time I tried, I couldn't find the right moment. I didn't want to hurt you." I stood up, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. "You didn't want to hurt me? This is hurting me more than anything. You've been planning this behind my back." Laura's tears flowed freely now. "I know. I made a terrible mistake. I'm sorry." I paced the room, struggling to keep my composure. "So, what happens now? Do you have a plan for everything?" Laura wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "I've already arranged for movers to come tomorrow. I've found a place with David. Everything is set." I felt a surge of bitterness. "And what about us? Our life together? All the dreams we had?" Laura looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I don't have answers for that. I wish things could be different, but I've made my choice." The weight of her words was suffocating. I felt my world collapse around me, each piece of our shared life scattering into the void of betrayal. I wanted to shout, to scream, but I was paralyzed by the gravity of the situation. "I need some time alone," I finally said, my voice cold and distant. "I need to process this." Laura nodded, standing up and gathering her things. "I understand. I'll be out of your way." As she left, I stood in the silent house, feeling a profound emptiness. The life I had known was gone, and the future was an uncertain blur. The only certainty was the pain, and the knowledge that everything had changed forever. The days following Laura's departure were a blur of anger and disbelief. The once familiar routines of my life felt foreign, and the quiet of the house seemed to amplify my feelings of betrayal. I needed answers, and more importantly, I needed a way to deal with the swirling storm of emotions inside me. That's when I reached out to Mark. Mark and I had been friends since college. We'd seen each other through various life crises, and now, I needed his help more than ever. I called him late at night, my voice tinged with desperation. "Mark, it's Jess. I need you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Jess. What's going on? Mark asked, his voice full of concern. I don't even know where to start. Laura's left me for someone else, and I don't know how to handle this. I need to find out what's really been happening. Mark's tone turned serious. All right, I'm on my way over. Hang tight. Within hours, Mark was at my door, carrying his usual "let's tackle this" attitude with him. He surveyed the house, noting the emptiness that had suddenly become so apparent. Man, this is rough, Mark said as we sat down at the kitchen table. But we'll get through it. What do you need? I need to know everything, I said, feeling a surge of determination. I want to understand what Laura's been hiding. I think there's more to this than she's letting on. Mark nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. I know someone who can help with that. His name's Leo. He's a tech expert, really good at digging into digital trails. If anyone can find out what Laura's been up to, it's him. Leo. I repeated, feeling a glimmer of hope. How can I reach him? I'll make the call, Mark said. I'll set up a meeting for tomorrow. The next day, I found myself sitting in a small, cluttered office with walls covered in tech paraphernalia. Leo was a wiry man with a sharp gaze and a quiet intensity. He motioned for me to sit as he fiddled with a few gadgets on his desk. So, you're Jess. Mark filled me in a bit, Leo said, glancing up from his computer screen. What can I do for you? I need to know what Laura's been up to, I said, my voice tight. She left me for another man and has been planning a new life. I want to understand how deep this goes and what else she might have hidden. Leo nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he began to access Laura's digital footprint. All right, let's see what we can uncover. It'll take some time, but I'll keep you updated. Over the next few days, I found myself returning to the house where Laura and I had shared so many memories, each day feeling more hollow than the last. Mark checked in regularly, offering moral support but also making sure I didn't lose focus. When Leo finally called with news, my heart raced with anticipation. I met him at his office, where he had a series of documents and screens ready. Jess, I've got some findings for you, Leo said, handing me a stack of papers. It looks like Laura's been planning her move to Europe for some time now. But there's something else you need to see. I flipped through the documents, seeing detailed records of transactions and communications. What am I looking at? Leo pointed to a series of bank transfers. Laura's been saving money, quite a bit, actually. And it wasn't just for her new life. It seems she's been setting aside funds specifically for you. My eyes widened. For me? Why? Leo shrugged. That's what we're trying to figure out. From what I can see, she intended for this money to help you start over, to give you a fresh start. But it's clear she didn't handle this situation well. I sat back, stunned by the revelation. So, she wasn't entirely selfish, but still, it's complicated. I don't know how to feel. Mark, who had been waiting outside the office, joined us. Jess, this changes things a bit, doesn't it? I nodded, feeling the weight of conflicting emotions. Yeah, it does. I still feel hurt, but knowing she had some intention to help me, it makes everything more confusing. Leo gave me a sympathetic look. Sometimes people mess up badly, but their intentions aren't always entirely bad. It's up to you how to handle this. As I left Leo's office, I realized that while the betrayal still stung, there was a new dimension to consider. Laura's actions had not been entirely devoid of consideration for me, but they were still wrapped in deception and hurt. I had a lot to think about, and the path forward was anything but clear. The days following Leo's revelation were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The news that Laura had been saving money for me brought with it a complex mix of feelings, anger, confusion, and a strange, unexpected gratitude. I found myself staring at the documents Leo had provided, trying to piece together the full story. One evening, I called Mark to discuss what I had learned. We met at a small cafe near my place, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of my empty house looming over us. Hey, Mark, I said as he slid into the booth across from me. I've been going over the documents Leo gave me. It's clear Laura had been planning her new life for a while, but she'd also been setting aside money for me. I don't know how to process this. Mark took a sip of his coffee, looking thoughtful. It's definitely a lot to take in. On one hand, she was planning a future with someone else and leaving you behind. On the other, she did have some intention to help you. That's a tough mix. I know, I said, rubbing my temples. I feel like I should be grateful for the money, but it's hard to reconcile that with the way she betrayed me. Mark leaned in, his expression serious. Look, Jess, you need to decide what you want to do with this information. Do you want to confront Laura again, or do you want to use the money and move on? I'm not sure, I admitted. I feel like I need to talk to her one more time. There are things I still need to understand, and maybe I can find some closure. Mark nodded. All right, if you think that's what you need, I'll be here to support you. Just remember to keep your cool. The next day, I reached out to Laura, requesting a final meeting to discuss everything. We agreed to meet at a park where we used to take long walks together, a place filled with memories both good and painful. When I arrived, Laura was already there, sitting on a bench, her posture tense. She looked up as I approached, her eyes a mixture of apprehension and sorrow. Jess, she said softly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I sat down beside her, holding up the documents Leo had given me. I've seen what you've been doing. The money you saved for me. I don't understand why you thought this was the right way to handle things. Laura took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting in her lap. I didn't want to leave you with nothing. I knew I was making a huge mistake, but I thought if I could at least provide you with some support, it might make things a bit easier. But you still went behind my back, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You made decisions for both of us without ever consulting me. Laura's eyes filled with tears. I know, Jess. I didn't know how to handle it. I was scared and didn't want to face the reality of what I was doing. I thought if I could just leave quietly and give you something to start over with, it might be a way to make up for the hurt. I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. It's not just about the money, Laura. It's about trust. You broke something that's hard to rebuild. Laura nodded, her voice trembling. I understand. I wish I could change the past, but I can't. I can only hope that the money will help you, even if it's a small consolation. I looked at her, feeling a mixture of anger and compassion. I've decided to accept the money you've saved. It's clear you intended to help me, even if the way you went about it was wrong. But I need to rebuild my life on my own terms. Laura's face softened, and she gave a small, relieved nod. Thank you, Jess. I hope you can find a way to move on and be happy. We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in our thoughts. Finally, I stood up, feeling a sense of resolution. Goodbye, Laura. I hope you find what you're looking for. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of closure. Accepting the money wasn't about forgiving Laura, it was about taking control of my own future. The betrayal would always sting, but I was ready to move forward, to rebuild my life on my own terms. With each step, I felt a little lighter, a little more at peace with the path ahead. The days following my final conversation with Laura were filled with a mixture of emotional exhaustion and a newfound determination. I accepted the money she had set aside for me, but I was determined to use it as a stepping stone rather than a crutch. The betrayal still stung, but I was ready to forge a new path, one defined by my own choices. I spent the following week sorting through my options. The house, now quiet and empty, seemed like a relic of a past life. I decided it was time to move on, both literally and figuratively. I put the house on the market and began searching for a new place where I could start fresh. One afternoon, Mark came over to help me pack up some of the last few belongings. He was a steady presence through this entire process, always ready with a word of encouragement or a joke to lighten the mood. You know, Mark said as he helped me box up a stack of old books, I've been thinking about how you've handled all this. It's pretty impressive. I looked up from the box, surprised. Impressive? I feel like I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Mark shook his head, a grin on his face. No, seriously. You've taken something really awful and turned it into an opportunity to start over. Not everyone could do that. I shrugged, trying to hide the smile that was forming. I guess. It hasn't been easy, but I'm trying to focus on the positives. As we worked, I reflected on the conversations and decisions I had made. I had begun to see the money Laura provided not as a symbol of her betrayal, but as a chance to invest in my own future. I found a small apartment in a vibrant neighborhood, one that felt full of possibilities. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, a blank slate where I could begin anew. The day of the move was hectic but filled with a sense of accomplishment. As the movers carried the last of my boxes into the new apartment, I stood in the doorway, taking in the view of my new surroundings. It was a small victory, but it felt like a significant step forward. Later that evening, I sat down with a bottle of wine and a notebook. I started to jot down my plans and goals for the future, trying to envision the life I wanted to build. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Laura. I hesitated before answering, but then decided it was best to clear the air once and for all. "Hello, Jess," Laura's voice came through, tentative and unsure. "Hi, Laura. How are you?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation neutral. "I'm doing all right," she said. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. I hope the move went well." "It did," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "I'm settling in and starting to think about the future. It's been a challenge, but I'm making progress." "I'm glad to hear that," Laura said, her voice softening. "I wanted to thank you again for accepting the money. It was the least I could do." "It wasn't just about the money, Laura," I said. "It was about moving forward and finding my own way. I'm doing that now, and I hope you're finding what you need too." There was a pause on the other end. "I am, Jess. I hope you find happiness and peace. You deserve it." "Thanks," I said, feeling a sense of finality. "I wish you the best too. Goodbye, Laura." As I ended the call, I felt a wave of relief. The conversation had been civil and kind, and it marked a clear separation between our past and our future. With everything in place, I focused on building my new life. I started to reconnect with old friends, explore new hobbies, and embrace the independence I had gained. Each day felt like a small victory, a step toward healing and growth. One evening, I found myself at a local cafe, enjoying a book and a cup of coffee. The place was cozy and filled with friendly faces, and I realized I was starting to feel at home in this new chapter of my life. The sense of betrayal was still there, but it was no longer the central focus of my existence. As I sipped my coffee, I looked around and felt a quiet satisfaction. I had faced a difficult situation, made tough decisions, and emerged stronger on the other side. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt full of possibilities.